Thanks for listening to the Farmers Weekly podcast. Do remember you can subscribe to Farmers Weekly magazine and get all the latest news, views and market prices by visiting fwi.co.uk. Welcome to this special episode of the Farmers Weekly podcast, recorded live here in London at the Farm Tax Rally, which has seen thousands of growers and livestock producers come to the capital to protest against the government's autumn budget, including the decision to impose inheritance tax on farmland. From the Farmers Weekly news desk, I'm Johann Tasker.
And I'm Louise Impey.
Louise, thousands and thousands of farmers from all over the country descending on London today, Tuesday the 19th of November 2024. We're here in Westminster. There's a National Farmers Union mass lobbying of MPs over these budget measures, but at the same time there's this rally in Whitehall to get this message across to the government that this tax, this inheritance tax that's being imposed on farmers from 2026 is simply unaffordable.
That's right. They are expecting this decision to be overturned, changed and made so that they can manage to run their farms and continue to hand them down the generations without having the handicap of having to pay a huge bill. And let's face it, farms can't afford huge bills at the moment. So they want to be without that handicap. They want to be able to keep producing food, do the right thing for the environment and just get on with the job that they love.
Now let's run through the arguments, Louise. The government says that its decision to impose 20% inheritance tax on farm assets worth over £1 million, a decision it made in this autumn's budget, will not affect the majority of farmers. It says estates worth up to £3 million could still be passed on by a couple completely free of inheritance tax, and where inheritance tax does apply, it says farmers will still pay 50% less than everyone else. Now, many farmers don't agree with that at all, and we don't know how many of them we're going to see here in London today. It could be 10,000, it could be 20,000. And one person who does agree with the farmers who say this tax is simply unaffordable is Shadow Farming Minister Robbie Moore.
I want to thank all farmers that have come down today to Westminster for making their stand, for making their voices heard. But we need you to continue doing what you're doing, because I, as the Shadow Farming Minister, will do what I absolutely can in holding the government's feet to the fire, but I cannot do this on my own. So please continue to do what you're doing, making your voices known to the government. And until they listen, until the government change what they're doing, we know the dire consequences that their budget is going to have on our farming community.
Shadow Farming Minister Robbie Moore. I have to say, though, Louise, that the prospect of paying inheritance tax isn't the only thing that farmers here are protesting about. There are other budget measures too. The tax hike on farm pickups and the faster phase-out of annual farm support payments in England. And another grievance is the fact that DEFRA, the Government Department for Farming, has chosen not to distribute £358 million to farmers, money that farmers could have had, and that was largely a failure of the previous Conservative government. And Robbie Moore was, of course, very much part of that government as a DEFRA minister. And Louise, while I was talking to Robbie Moore, you've been talking to some of the protest organisers, including Herefordshire farmer Martin Williams.
I'm not expecting the government to come out and wave their hands in the air and say, it's okay, it's all over. But what I would like them to do is come to us and discuss the proposals that they've put in front of us, because they are mistaken in their numbers, they're mistaken in the effect it'll have on farms, and the country is up in arms about it, and quite rightly so.
What does it take to get a government to admit that they've made a mistake, do you think?
Well, I think when you're digging a hole in the wrong direction, you've just got to stop digging, haven't you? And to get them to stop digging would be good to start with. We're more than welcome to talk to them, more than welcome. That's what we want to do, is open dialogue. The sad part about it is, they, even with their misguided figures, they say 500 people are affected. 5 of us organised this event. There's another 100 events with another 5 people organising it behind them. So they've got nothing to lose. These people have got nothing to lose because the government have taken it away from them. And that is very dangerous to society.
So Louise, Shadow Farm Minister Robbie Moore there, and also one of the protest organisers, Martin Williams. We spoke to them separately, but very, very similar messages.
Yeah, the message is coming through as we expected it would do, really. This is, and it's the reason why they're all in London today, isn't it? This is just not practical, it's not workable, and they are telling us, and not just them, I mean, the numbers here, extraordinary, really. I don't think anybody's expecting as many people as have turned out for this, even in this terrible inclement weather, that this is going to have to change. The government's got to get back round the table and sort this out.
It's a cold November day here. It's raining. Any Londoner who thought that rain would stop farmers from coming to London, well, I have to say, after the last 2 years that have been very wet, rain is something that farmers are very, very used to.
Yes, and you know what, up until the last couple of weeks, we thought that weather was one of the biggest challenges for farming. Well, the Labour government actually has changed that and put themselves in pole position in terms of the biggest challenge that farming is facing.
Yes, well, as one farmer said earlier, it took the Conservative government 14 years to rile us. Labour have managed to do that in just 4 months. And as we're standing here on Whitehall, Louise, we can see more and more farmers coming along, farming families, not just farmers, people of all ages, from youngsters who've probably taken a day off school to couples to older farmers. There's a lot of olive and green around.
There certainly is. And you're right, we have got generations of farming families here, and that is a really good thing to see, because of course it is actually all about the next generation. It's all about giving them the choice, if they want to farm, that they still will be able to, that they won't be saddled with debt that they just can't meet those bills. We don't want that. So really good to see the young here, and lots of young farmers too who are already farming, but looking now and looking into the future and thinking, goodness, am I going to be able to keep going?
And fair play to the Farmers Club as well, who've relaxed their dress code for the day, welcoming members, probably some members who haven't been to the club for some time, but also, I guess, giving over at least one of their rooms as a kind of a war room or a bunker for some of the rally organisers. And Louise, while you were there, you also managed to catch up with arable farmer and Farmers Weekly Farmer of the Year, Mark Means.
Our margin over our assets is 1% if we're lucky. Most people who put investment are hoping for a payback in 5 years. We're looking at 25 years. And if you get a tax that you can pay over 10 years, but 20% of your asset, you're never going to go anywhere. You're dead. My reason on Thursday morning after the budget, I had no direction, no incentive. And it's on the same with small family businesses. None of us have got any need to be putting any more investment, any more risk in it. And the worrying bit of all, that the repercussion of all, is the banks. They're looking at, they don't know about the devaluation of what land could be. Also, is there a 20% time bomb that they haven't counted for? So at the moment, they're going to lend at probably a third to what they were before, instead of half of whatever purchase. And they could be, instead of it being under 2% above base, they could be 2.5% to 3% above. We've already heard that it's actually gone up by 0.5%, lending has, for farmers. And that was a safe bet. It ain't anymore.
So we need some action, and we need this to change.
Yeah, and watched it on Newsnight last night. They're saying, oh no, it won't go to Parliament this year. It'll be for 2026. But that actually means that they can have a consultation. They haven't done anything. DEFRA doesn't even know. And is it 28%? Is it now 33%? Or is it 66%? They haven't got a clue. We could be facing £3 million bill. I've got no idea how we're going to do that. It's sell it, and then who's going to have it? Next door neighbours, or a few fields away from us, there's an American conglomerate religious group that just bought probably 7,000 acres. All right, they're the number one customer for John Deere in the world. They're probably the second biggest landowner in the world. They're buying it up. They'll buy this up. Next thing will be solar panels. It'll be other things. We won't have a food industry. The mills will go. The production of the dairies will go. It'll all be imported. And when you see that imported food, do you trust it? Can you believe in it? Those are the things that they don't understand. In the end, this GDP of gaining by 1.1%, with the incentive taken away for all private businesses at the moment, inheritance and business property relief, there is no need to do it. Drop staff, remove the risk of it. And in actual fact, we'll be seeing that £500 million they're hoping to gain in 2029 will be a negative. They'll be actually looking and thinking, where else are they going to get the money? Because no one wants to invest. We can't even borrow to invest now. Why take the risk? It's just close your doors and say thank you very much. This is bizarre. They haven't thought it through. Someone's presented it, thought that's a good idea. Oh yeah, we'll do it. Sorry, it's going to kill it. It's going to kill the countryside. It's killed enough people already, and tossing around a grenade before budget saying it might come or not. Some people have actually sadly taken drastic situations.
So Louise, Mark Means, arable farmer, Farmers Weekly Farmer of the Year. So obviously a good farmer, but not to take anything away from Mark, the situation that he finds himself in, very, very much the same as many other farmers.
Yes, it is. And, this is at the heart of this whole issue, isn't it, really? We've got the government doubling down on their figures. Everybody else involved in farming is disputing those figures. What Mark had to say was very enlightening, very interesting, if that's the right word. But as I said, this is at the heart of the matter, and this is why there are so many people here with us in London today. That these figures, they just don't work. They don't add up. They don't make sense. Farming can't cope with this at the moment. So, Mark, I think, put that very, very well.
At Avent, we create solutions to improve your livestock farming. Our compact loaders handle daily demands with ease. From feeding and bedding to cleaning and maintenance. With powerful hydraulics, a compact design and a quick attach system, you can switch attachments quickly, navigating narrow barns and tight pens effortlessly. Our durable and reliable machines save you time and effort. Join countless livestock farmers who trust Avent to keep their operations running smoothly. Avent, your trusted partner in livestock farming. Search for Avent now.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
You're listening to the Farmers Weekly Podcast, a special episode recorded as live here in London at the Family Farm Tax Rally. Thousands of farmers from across the country coming to London to protest against the government's budget measures. Well, let's go and speak to some of those farmers and find out where they've come from.
Hi, I'm Jack Blackwell from Chipping in Oxfordshire.
Alice Jones.
So Alice is my partner. Come today to support a good cause, I think. It's something that's going to decimate all small family farms, which is what we are. And they need to change it, don't they? They need to do something about it.
What do you farm at home?
So we've got cows and sheep and a few pigs. So we're a very conventional mixed farm and no arable. And rent a lot of land. So we're going to be effective from that point of view as well, because obviously there's a big worry with, our landlords selling the land, to pay the tax, as well as we've got to find our own tax, when something, unfortunately happens to my father.
And what do you make of the day?
I'm glad that people weren't put off by the weather, but then I think farmers are quite used to the rain, so here we are in full force. I think it's nice to see everybody turn out today.
Yeah.
And a good turnout from your particular part of the country?
Yes, absolutely. The train coming here was absolutely round for the farmers, so that's quite nice to see.
So we caught the train from Charlbury this morning, and there are two trains left at the same time, and I think we probably had 20 people on each train. So, and then throughout, there are people on the train already that have come from Worcester, and then continuing to London, picked up lots of people on the way.
The people we're representing from Cumbria, so
you're not farmers, but what do you do?
I'm a geotechnical engineer. He's a software engineer.
I'm a software engineer.
Outdoor instructor. So
why have you come along?
It's absolutely outrageous. I can't believe that they're doing this. Farms operate on an absolutely tiny profit margin, and if you're taking away 20% of the farm, it's no longer profitable, and the whole thing is going to crumble. So in 20 years' time, we won't have small family farms, and the countryside, as we know it, will have changed dramatically. It's absolutely vile.
So you grew up in Cumbria?
All the important growing up I did in Cumbria. So I've known the people in the valley for 50 years, and it is about farming, but it's not just about farming. It's a way of life. It's a community. It's precious. It's a national asset and that national treasure, and it needs to be protected. And those farms are all worth way more than 3 million, because people like these Labour MPs will buy the houses when they come up on the market as second homes, which makes them all worth at least £1 million. And then a couple of pony paddocks, Bosch, but they're still under the £3 million, so they don't need to pay inheritance tax. It's sheep farmers with their hundreds of acres, which they have to have, that will be paying the tax, and it will ruin the family farms. They've been in the family for hundreds of years in some cases, and it is iniquitous.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Where have you come from?
We've come from Northamptonshire.
And you farm yourself?
We've got an arable farm, yep.
What sort of impact is the budget going to have on your business?
Devastating. It will not be able to go on to the next generation. You know, the loss of subsidies, the fact that farmers can't sell their produce for the amount that it costs to make it. Prices are held, you know, it's incredible that you've got people who work 365 days a year, 7 days a week, all hours of the day, for under the minimum wage, no vacations.
50% of farmers make less than the minimum wage, if they make any money at all. Just a kick in the proverbials.
And what's your plan? Can you see a way out of this?
Not without a change. Not without a change. We've just been hit by sort of 3 tractors, so to speak. You know, more tax, less subsidy, and now this inheritance tax. Just the income one this year will go down 70 grand, just like that, and then up from my son. He doesn't stand a chance, so it's unworkable.
So Louise, some of the voices there, some of the farming families, very, very high on emotion. What have people been telling you?
People have been telling me that they're very pleased to be here. They are determined to get farming's voice heard, and that's obviously clear. I mean, we can see how many people have turned out for that, despite the weather. So you're right, emotions are running quite high. Feelings are very strong on this one. There is a quiet determination amongst this crowd, and there is you get the feeling that they're not going to take no for an answer, that they are going to stick at it. They are determined to get their point across. It's been very interesting, I think, Johann, seeing all the national media here, and it's been very interesting already seeing some of their output. So I would say the farming industry has been very, very successful at telling the public, what their concerns are and why these measures aren't workable. Now, you and I both know we spend our time with farmers every day of the week. We know about some of the other budget measures as well, which are also causing, huge concern amongst the farming community. So, there are more messages to come. I think that's what I'm saying, and there's more work to be done, certainly. I can't imagine that we won't see food prices go up. I see that today already, before I left, a couple of retailers, you can't really dispute what they're saying about how much their costs are going to go up and what that's going to mean for prices. So we hope there's not obviously too much downward pressure on farmers. They don't need that at the moment. But of course the difference with farming, and I think this probably does need to be spelt out, is that farmers don't have that option to put their prices up. Other businesses do, so that's where you all start to feel the pain. But farmers, mostly producing commodities, just don't really get that opportunity.
And that's very much the case, isn't it? This is not just about inheritance tax. Inheritance tax, I guess, is the touch paper for this rally, for this protest, but there are other budget measures too, some of them that are affecting businesses outside agriculture as well, such as a hike in employers' national insurance contributions, but also things like the harder, faster phase out of the basic payment scheme in England, farmers getting a fraction of the government support that they were expecting they were going to receive in 2025, now looking at a maximum payment of something like £7,200. One of the speakers today, Louise, is Baroness Kate Rock. She is going to be talking about the impact on tenants, because tenant farmers, not just landowners, face very, very real challenges because of this budget. And earlier I managed to catch up with Kate Rock, and this is what she had to say.
I think the budget actually has huge consequences in 3 areas, not just the APR and the BPR, but also the capping and the escalation of the D-link payments. The only way to get payments now going forward from 2025 is to go into SFI, which is basically taking land out of food production. And I am already hearing from tenant farmers that they're getting really worried about how they're going to pay their rent next year with that capping and escalation of the D-link payments. I think the other really big concern is national insurance. The increase to the national minimum wage, this increase of 1.25% to employers' national insurance contributions will make employing a farm worker that bit more expensive. But just coming back to agricultural property relief and BPR, in the ROC review, which we did on the tenanted sector, we took a huge amount of evidence on the taxation framework within which farming sits. And what was clear to us was that the operation of APR alongside the business property relief was actually doing a really good job in allowing owner-occupied family businesses to pass down to the next generation. So, in fact, owner-occupiers could have managed reasonably well with just BPR, although there would have been some tax to pay in respect of the inheritance tax of farmhouses. So, in my mind, it's really clear that the Chancellor should have left BPR in place. I don't for a moment believe that the Chancellor and Steve Reed really appreciated the devastating impact that the budget measures would have on hard-working tenant farmers. And just on APR specifically, I am already seeing evidence of wealth advisors telling large estates to take back rented land.
So that is actually happening already then?
It is already happening. And I believe that is really quite an existential crisis in terms of tenanted land. There is a huge worry that private landlords will be forced, really into a position of having to terminate their existing farm business agreements, their tenanted lands, because we're already seeing wealth advisors saying, well, as part of these new wealth management arrangements, we're going to have to look at how those arrangements are going to stay in place, or even to fund sufficient funds, to pay this anticipated inheritance tax bills. If you're a private landlord and you need to sell off land, the first land you're probably going to look at is the land that if you don't farm in hand, your tenanted land. So I am incredibly worried that it will be a huge threat to the private let sector in agriculture.
So Kate Rock there, Louise, talking about the impact on tenant farmers. Kate Rock, of course, the author of the ROC Review, which looked at the future for the tenanted sector, including the challenges and opportunities. I have to say mainly the challenges facing the tenanted sector, with some recommendations there that she says the new government is more or less ignoring.
Yes, she's one of the speakers here today. She's going to be up on that big stage. I think before they came into power, before the election, she got a very sympathetic response from the Labour government. Of course, they were in opposition then and weren't able to put anything into practice. And of course, since they've arrived, I think she has lost her position, hasn't she, as a special advisor to them? And they're going to, if you like, row their own boat on this. So it'll be very interesting to hear what she has to say. I think she will get a very good reception from this crowd. There are a lot of tenant farmers here. And of course, yes, they've got some worries, some concerns, anxieties, and a really important sector as well.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
You're listening to the Farmers Weekly Podcast, a special episode from the Family Farm Tax Rally in London. It's going on behind us now, speaker after speaker. We've had Kate Rock, who we spoke to earlier in the podcast, also Labour peer Baroness Anne Malilieu, Lib Dem leader Ed Davey, and now we can listen also to Jeremy Clarkson, who's addressing the crowds as we speak.
Now, I know a lot of people all across the country in all walks of life took a bit of a kick on the shin with that budget. You lot got a knee in the nuts and a light hammer blow to the back of the head. We had pickup trucks, double cab pickup trucks, being reclassified as company cars. 211% tax rise there. £50 carbon tax on a bag of fertiliser. the basic farm payments altered in such a way that we're getting a lot less than we thought we were going to get. And then there was the inheritance tax business. Honestly, I don't know where to start. I know you've heard a lot about it today, and I'm not going to dwell on that. But I do want to finish, if I may, with a message to the government. I do. Not a shouty one. It's this. For the sake of everybody here, and for all the farmers who are stuck at home today, paralysed by a fog of despair over what's been foisted upon them, I beg of the government to be big, to accept that this was rushed through, it wasn't thought out, and it's a mistake. That's the big thing to do, admit it, and back down. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
So, Louise, we said on the podcast last Friday that Jeremy Clarkson would be making a special guest appearance, as it were. Very much a crowd favourite.
Yes, he is a crowd favourite, but I have to say some of the other speakers did extremely well as well, and they really struck a chord with all the people that are here. I mean, Jeremy kept it fairly short, he kept it brief. He knows it's not all about him, and this is a problem bigger than that, if you like. So, I was really impressed, for example, by a farmer from County Durham, Claire Wise. She spoke very, very well. You could just tell by the reaction of everybody here that she was striking a chord with everything that she said. That's a farm, they're a mixed farm up there. Not only does she grow crops, produce livestock, they have disadvantaged children visiting the farm. As she pointed out, probably the only opportunity they get to get out into the countryside. Another really interesting point that she made was that her father and brother built their village hall, and I think that's another really important thing, that farmers do contribute to the community.
Yeah, for anybody listening to this rally or protest or seeing the speakers, yes, there's a lot of tweed here. Yes, there's a lot of Barber jackets and olive clothing. But I have to say, the organisers have done a really, really good job of bringing people together from not only across the political divide with Labour, Lib Dem and Conservative representatives taking to the stage, Jeremy Clarkson too, but also reflecting, I guess, the broad church that is modern agriculture in the UK, from Claire Wise to Ollie Harrison, yes, one of the organisers, but also a big YouTuber, to people like Martin Williams, who we spoke to earlier on the podcast, and also Clive Bailey from the Farming Forum, who looked to be really quite choked up, to be honest.
Yes, he did, didn't he? Clive, I think, was quite emotional up on that stage. And actually, so too was James Mills. And both James and Clive bringing their children up on stage with them. And actually, so too did Ollie Harrison. And made the point that the whole rally is all for that reason, that they want them to have the choice that they have had. It went down very well. I mean, that, as we've said, there are quite a lot of children here anyway today. And that is something that somehow we have got to get through to the government.
And Andrew Ward also addressing the crowd, Lincolnshire farmer Andrew Ward, also a YouTuber. And Andrew highlighting the fact that so many of the farmers who've come here today bringing food, donations of food with them to donate to London food banks.
My name's Richard Barker. We're from Sea Harvest Charity, which is based in Acton. That we supply around 400 charities, food banks, soup kitchens.
You've got a lot of donations here. You've got cauliflower, I can see Weetabix, I can see British flour, I can see loads and loads of stuff. Yeah. Potatoes. How many vans have you had?
We've had a couple of lorries and a few vans, but we can't get down to where it all is at the moment because there's tractors in the way. So everyone's been kind enough to help carry a lot to the vans for us.
So everybody's helping out. Where's this food going to go to?
It's going to go to London, all four corners of London.
People obviously in need.
Yeah, mainly food banks and soup kitchens and stuff, hostels.
It's a strange state of affairs when farmers are saying they can't make money from producing food, and yet people can't afford to buy it, right?
Yeah, that is true.
Best of luck, mate. Thank you. Cheers.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
You're listening to the Farmers Weekly Podcast, a special episode from the Family Farm Tax Rally in London. You listened to more of the speakers than I did, Louise. While you were doing that, I wandered over to Church House, where this mass lobbying of MPs was taking place, where 1,800 farmers were addressed by NFU President Tom Bradshaw.
React like this, and this betrayal on agricultural property relief and business property relief is extraordinary, and it affects farmers from every corner of the United Kingdom. I don't think I've ever seen the industry this angry, this disillusioned, this upset, this worried. And given that we've had a lot to be angry about in recent years, that's saying something. Together, our focus today with MPs is on APR and BPR. This shocking policy, built on bad data and launched with no consultation, is simply unacceptable. The Treasury didn't even tell DEFRA. To launch a policy this destructive without speaking to anyone involved in farming beggars belief. To have 1,800 of you meeting with your MPs is an incredible achievement. And finally, I wish you all a safe journey home after your MP meetings. We'll keep in touch. The door's open, don't be strangers. We're here to support you and to help in any way we can. Thank you.
That's NFU President Tom Bradshaw addressing 1,800 NFU members at Church House before they went on to lobby their MPs. The culmination for many farmers here in London of what is a big day, an important day, a very emotionally charged day. And afterwards, I caught up with Tom, and this is what he had to say.
Oh, look, it's been a crazy 3 weeks since the budget, Johann. Incredible to see so many members here, so many farmers out in Whitehall. You know, it's just been an incredible display of unity. I really hope the government now recognise that they've picked a fight with the wrong people. But this is about the policy. You know, the policy is so flawed on so many levels. I just hope the Chancellor will sit down around the table, will work through this in a constructive way so that we can get to a conclusion and move on to a far more exciting agenda where we deliver for food security for the country.
You wanted, I think, originally 600 people to come here. You've had 3 times that amount, 1,800 people. You've had thousands backing you up on a rally in Whitehall.
It's just been phenomenal. The response from the industry. But they don't do this lightly. They feel betrayed, they're angry, they're worried. They're concerned for their futures, their children's future. They're concerned for their parents who may be in ill health, who may not expect to live 7 years. The human impact of this policy, I can't believe that was planned. They tell me that this is a well-constructed policy. Any policy that has that human impact right at the heart of it is an ill-conceived policy.
You've said, I believe, that you're willing to sit down with the Treasury. What do you want from them?
Look, first of all, we have to remove the human impact absolutely immediately. That pressure sitting over an industry that's already struggling with huge mental health challenges is simply unacceptable. Then we should have a consultation. Let's set the exam question. What is it they're trying to achieve? The crazy thing about this policy is I think they've opened up another loophole. They decided they were going to tax pensions. So anybody that's got money in a pension will now take it out of a pension and buy land worth up to £1 million, so they've got inheritance tax free. That just opens up a loophole rather than closing the one they tell us that they were trying to close.
Your members, farmers going home from London, what's your message to them?
Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. You've been absolutely brilliant. And we will continue to take this fight to government. We will not give up. You will not give up. The government need to know they have got this wrong. And like I keep on saying, this is not about right and left. This is about right and wrong. And this policy is simply wrong. It's poorly thought through. It's poorly constructed. And they've put the food-producing family farm right in the middle of it.
So Louise, Tom Bradshaw there, absolutely shattered, exhausted, I guess, quite emotional himself, but also determined to do the right thing and saying that this is not about right or left in terms of politics, but for farming, this is very much about right or wrong. And as far as Tom and the NFU are concerned, and the thousands of farmers and farming families here today, this budget was wrong. This decision to impose inheritance tax on farmland is wrong, and it's threatening the very future of family farming in the UK.
That's right. You know, Tom's had a very long day, hasn't he? And I suspect he's had some very long days recently as well. So, I mean, hats off to him. And I have to say that the people here, the crowd here, absolutely behind him. You know, they do recognise what he's doing and what the NFU is doing. There are other office holders as well who are all working very, very hard. And, you know, we have to really wish success on them, I think, to put this much effort in and to, you know, have these meetings. And I think some of these meetings have probably been very difficult indeed, but they are still doing them. They are they've got their members' interests at heart, and they are determined to see some change.
And we've come here, we're just by, just almost in the shadow of Westminster Cathedral. There's a pub over the road, the Westminster Arms. You can see farmers there, flat caps, baseball caps, beanie hats, all sorts of hats, all having a pint, reflecting on the day. Louise, where do you think this is going to go now? People have had their day in London, as it were, but it doesn't stop here, does it? The government does seem to be digging in and saying, no, we're determined to see this policy through. The NFU determined that the policy is wrong. Do you think there's room for a compromise?
I mean, that's the big question, isn't it now? You know, we've had this amazing event today, and we have seen just how strongly people feel about this. It's not just the NFU, it's wider than that. I think the public are very much on farming side, and I've seen some figures which really do suggest that. So, yeah, the question is, what is going to happen from here? We don't know yet, but let's hope there is some compromise. Let's hope they get back round the table and we get some better news. You know, this is an industry that really does need now some better news.
I can't see that the government will back down completely. This is just a personal view. They seem, I think I've said before that, you know, often the first sign of a U-turn is a government denying a U-turn, but there are measures from talking to various people and from text messages and things that people have been sending me. There seem to be a combination of measures that could make this situation a little bit easier for family farms. Things like increasing the threshold, so fewer smaller farmers are affected by this policy, by phasing it in perhaps over a number of years, so people who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, even older, have time to adjust and know that their family farm is going to be safe. And then the people coming up behind them can make provision to ensure that their businesses are run taking into account the fact that maybe they are going to be liable for some inheritance tax on farmland. I do think that there is a compromise to be had, but Tom Bradshaw very, very determined that the ball now is in the Treasury's court.
Yes, it is. And actually, we have seen, I don't think, no sight of any of the Labour big players at all, have we, today?
Well, other than Baroness Malalieu, and fair play to her, a big Labour peer, but you're right, nobody from the government, nobody from the ministerial positions at DEFRA or the Treasury willing to address the crowds.
No, they weren't willing to, were they? And, they have been absent really for the last few weeks. They are insisting that the decisions that were made by the Treasury are the right ones. Everybody else knows that they're not. They're the wrong ones. You know, one of the speakers, and I'm fairly sure actually it was Jeremy Clarkson, asked for a show of hands looking out over that massive sea of people. I think it was Jeremy. He said, right, well, put your hand up if you've seen your accountant or your solicitor in the last 2 weeks. Well, I mean, everybody's hands shot up. So this bit about only a very few farms affected, as he said, that just completely disproves that. You only had to look and see the reaction to that question. So, you and I know that. Most of the other people here know that those numbers aren't correct. They aren't right. And, we've got to get to some sort of whether it's a compromise solution, but we have got to get something organised that makes this bearable.
We have indeed. It needs to be bearable. It's not a case of farmers not wanting to pay tax. This is about being able to pay tax. That's about it for this special episode of the Farmers Weekly podcast. Louise, the big thing for me was that everything today has been done in good nature. I wouldn't say a good time has been had by all, but everybody's been well behaved. Certainly, it has been a real show of strength.
It has been a show of strength. It's also been a show of wellies. And my goodness, the generosity of people, the produce and the food donations that came into the centre of London, courtesy of the farming industry. I mean, just fantastic to see that. And I believe that, they're going to a charity that will distribute those amongst food banks. And that's fantastic. That just goes to show, farmers will always do their bit to help others if they're asked to.
Well, that's it for this episode of the Farmers Weekly podcast, a special episode from London. Please do remember to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you really like what you hear, please do leave us a 5-star review. We'll be back later in the week with another episode of the Farmers Weekly podcast. But for now, thank you for listening. I'm Johann Tasker. Goodbye.
And I'm Louise Impey. Goodbye.